Good morning. Welcome to the Oxnard City Council Finance and Governance Committee regularly scheduled committee meeting. The date is December 8, 2020, and the city clerk will take the roll, please.
Member Lopez.
Here.
Member Perello.
Here.
Chair Flynn.
Present.
Chair, we have a quorum, and the agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall kiosk on Wednesday, December 2nd.
Okay, we will definitely rise momentarily here for a flag salute, but we also want to remember, at the request of committee member Perello, Pearl Harbor, December 7th. Also, recently the passing of former Port Hueneme City Councilman John Sharkey. All rise, please. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated, please. So we have public comments on items not on the agenda. Normally I read the whole thing, and I'm not going to do that this time for my last committee meeting as chair. And we do have two speakers, and it's Jay and Ray, and it rhymes. So why don't we call up Jay first? Madam City Clerk, any response from Jay?
Looks like it's still attempting to go through.
Thank you.
Okay, it's gone to voicemail.
All right, we got to get Jay back in the game here. And the next one is Ray Blattel, please. I want to say good morning to Councilmember Lopez.
Good morning,
Hello.
Ray. We've got 2 minutes for you to address the Finance and Governance Committee. Please begin.
Thank you. Committee chair and members, this has been on my mind for quite some time, but last week's city council meeting has compelled me to express myself and speak my mind. What follows is a recommended amendment to the city council procedures. Following staff presentations during which factual or unbiased data or information may or may not be presented, often a member of the public provides comments and his or her own data. After all public comments are received, staff is again offered the opportunity to respond to the public statements or comments and data. However, this should not be the end all. The staff often contradicts or dispels the public statements or data, while the public speaker is not afforded the opportunity and equal time to defend his or her statements or data. All the staff member has to do is declare the public wrong or whatever, and the council members swallow that almost all the time, and the story ends here. That should not be the case. This is not fair to the public. The staff are not infallible. The public should be allowed the opportunity to defend their position or data. If a staff member, whomever it may be, responds to the public's members' comments or statements, then that public member should have an equal opportunity to defend his or her position, data, or whatever. This is only fair. Please consider an amendment to the council procedures. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. And we will now go to the consent agenda. That, Madam City Clerk, that ends the speakers. Is that correct?
That's correct, unless you want to try the first person again.
Oh yeah, we'll go back and try that one more time.
Okay. Okay, same result, went to voicemail.
Okay, all right. Now we'll go on to the item C, which is the consent agenda, and that's the approval of the minutes. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Okay, Madam City Clerk, we have a motion by Committee Member Perillo and a second by Committee Member Lopez. The vote, please.
Member Lopez,
Yes.
Member Perillo,
Yes.
Chair Flynn.
Aye.
The motion to approve carries 3-0.
Very well. We'll now go to item D under reports. This is the City Manager's Department, item 1, City of Oxnard Whistleblower Summary Update. The recommendations that the Finance and Governance Committee recommends that the City Council receive and file an update on the whistleblower matters. Ms. Klima.
We have for you Henry Ohm, who is our independent auditor, and he's going to be presenting this whistleblower presentation. Henry?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Klima. Good morning, City Mayor, City Council members, city staff, and everyone joining us virtually. Again, my name is Henry Ohm. I'm with Price Page and Company. We have been engaged by the City of Oxnard to monitor the whistleblower program. And this presentation is part of our ongoing presentation actually semi-annually to the Finance and Governance Committee regarding matters that have come to our attention that we need to share with the committee. So we have a PowerPoint slide here that we prepared. Next slide, please. And just to share with those who are joining us for the first time and seeing this presentation, the whistleblower program was established by the City of Oxnard back in 2017. It's really designed for the city to receive complaints from city employees, members of the public, and anybody who would wish to report improper government action. The complaints that we do receive and monitor are considered to be confidential. We do not share the identity of the complainant without the permission of the complainant, or only with the exception if we're required to do so by law, by a law enforcement agency conducting a criminal investigation. So this provides the complainant with confidence that information shared to us under the whistleblower program will remain confidential. Next slide, please. Our focus really is on fiscal related matters. And although the whistleblower program receives complaints, allegations of misdoings on a number of different matters, the resources of the city really is focused on reviewing and investigating fiscal and financial related matters. So I wanted to share that with those watching and listening in. That doesn't mean that your complaints and allegations and submissions are ignored. We do forward them to the appropriate department as we deem fit in our professional judgment. But after we receive the complaint, what we generally do is we'll evaluate the complaint for merit prior to launching an investigation. So not all complaints and allegations we conduct an investigation for. And I'll share a little bit in the slide where we receive various matters that aren't fiscal related, but we do forward those to the appropriate department. One thing I do want to highlight is that we do not provide updates to the complainant or other parties until the matter has been fully investigated or reported. And the reason why we do that is because we don't want to be used as a vehicle for anyone's personal investigation, right? We don't want anybody to alleging misconduct and asking the whistleblower monitors to conduct investigations on behalf of an individual or any specific group. So we will review it to determine if there's any merit to launch an investigation, but we do not provide feedback as to the progress of the investigation until it's all done. Next slide, please. The term we use for screening the complaint is called predication, and predication is defined by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners as the totality of circumstances that would lead a reasonable, professionally trained, and prudent individual to believe a fraud has occurred, is occurring, or will occur. So predication is what we try to establish before we jump into a formal investigation. This is where we may talk to city staffs, city management, personnel within the departments, about a specific matter. We might request information and review it to determine whether predication exists. So certainly, in general terms, we're trying to determine whether it's credible or not before we launch a full investigation. Next slide, please. When we do receive complaints and they do have merit, we categorize them in two categories. There's a quantitative category and there's a qualitative category. Under the quantitative category, we're trying to assess what's the priority? Well, in terms of dollars, how much are we talking about? And so a low priority is any matter that comes to our attention that would be quantified as less than 25,000. Medium priority would be between 25 and 75,000. And high would be above 75,000. And I believe these parameters have been set by the city of Oxnard in this whistleblower program. So that's the quantitative assessment. Next slide, please. In addition to a quantitative assessment, we also perform a qualitative assessment. So depending on the nature of the matter, we also categorize by low, medium, and high. Low would involve isolated instances of potential time abuse. This might be payroll, overtime, wasteful practices that have been reported to us. Medium priority might be abuse of authority, medium to low employment involvement. So this might be city management, city staff, things like personnel in those categories. And high priority would involve high level of management, collusions of multiple wrongdoer. So we evaluate both quantitative and qualitative assessments when we take a look at a complaint. Next slide, please. The last time we reported to the Finance and Governance Committee on the whistleblower program, that was through June 4th, 2020. So from June 5th, 2020 through November 23rd, 2020, I'm sorry, we have a total of 11 complaints received for this entire period. And they've been summarized here. We've shared the type of allegation. So we don't go into specific detail regarding what the nature of that was, but we do share in general what the type of allegation was. We also disclose the source of submission, whether that's email, website, or through the phone. Just to share with those listening in, there are 3 mechanisms to report these allegations. The city of Oxnard has a website available in which you click a link to report fraud, waste, or abuse. It actually goes to our firm's website, and that information stays with us. It stays with our IT department in our firm. It is not shared with the city of Oxnard. So that's through the website. Complainants can email us directly. Our email addresses are published as well, so they can reach out that way, or through a whistleblower hotline in which they can call, and that's available in English and Spanish as well. But as you can see here, the majority of the complaints that we do receive are through the website. And again, we evaluate them for priority. And you can see under current status, if it's not fiscal related, we forward them to the appropriate department for further investigation. And you can see that there, out of the 11 items that we have received through that period, 10 of them are considered to be non-fiscal related, so 91%. There is one item down at the bottom, if you could see 2020-4-8, related to procurement. And we are currently in the predication phase of determining whether there's any merit to that allegation in order to proceed with an investigation. Now, I will have to say that this item is, that has been reported is comparable to what we received in past complaints. So it does appear to be related to the same issue. So that's all being reviewed as one item. And because the nature of the complaint, it's assessed as high in terms of priority. Okay. Next slide, please. So today we've investigated a total of 3 out of 79 total complaints and allegations as part of the whistleblower program. And we report those out to the Finance and Governance Committee as deemed appropriate. As I shared just recently, there is a group of complaints alleging similar matters that we are currently reviewing to determine predication. So remember, not currently in a formal investigation just yet. We're just scratching the surface to determine if there's any merit to this complaint. And if there is, we will launch a formal investigation. We'll notify the Finance and Governance Committee of that, but we'll not report on the status of that until it's fully completed. Next slide, please. So that concludes the presentation of the whistleblower program update through November 23rd, 2020. I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee members have as part of this process.
Thank you very much. Madam City Clerk, we don't have any questions on this item. Is that correct?
No public signups, correct.
Yeah, okay, very well. Are there any committee comments? Why don't we start with the originator of the whistleblower program, Committee Member Perrello.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Ohm, thank you very much for the presentation. You always give a thorough presentation. I appreciate the heck out of it. One question on slide 7. We mentioned the means by which they can reach your organization.
Correct.
Email, phone, and website. I also thought that there was the ability to send a letter.
There is, you're all right,
And the-
right. I
and the-
should have clarified that.
And
Our-
the
our-
reason I do ask this, Henry, is because we have some people that are very gun shy, that their confidentiality will be tipped off. So I've told them, send a letter without, return address, rubber gloves, whatever you want to do, but send a letter. So that still is an acceptable method. Am I correct?
That is correct. That is correct. I should have clarified that. If the complainants go to the website on the City of Oxnard, they click on the report fraud, waste or abuse link, it takes them to our website that shares information. You're absolutely right. They could even fax, they could write us a letter, they could email us. Those methods are all available on the website. To my knowledge, to date, there has not been any receipt via mail thus far. Mail or
Okay.
fax. But that is a mechanism available to them.
Thank you. Those are my only questions. Appreciate the report. Thank you, Henry.
Yes, Committee Member Lopez, any comments or questions?
Yeah, no questions. Just thank you for this. This is very helpful, especially to receive this information periodically. And I think it just helps to keep everyone informed. So I really appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just like to commend Committee Member and Councilman Perrello for this program, and also for the auditors for being able to succinctly and report and identify what in fact is not only the status of the program, but I think what's most important about it is we haven't had any fraudulent, illegal, unethical behavior take place. That's the word here, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, honesty, I believe, prevails in Oxnard city government, and in particular in city finances. Where we have the problem, just to remind people, and I'll talk about that when it comes to a future item, and that is the abuse of public contracts not being vetted properly, and not really having a checks and balance as to, well, it's on a future agenda item. So I'll just say that this whistleblower program, I believe, has been very successful. And I just want to commend my colleague, Councilman and Committee Member Perrello, and commend also the auditor as well as the finance staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I can just add, I appreciate that, Mayor, but the council did see the wisdom of this, and the entire council gets to share the credit. And it's a compliment on our city that we're not finding the things that we thought we might find. Thank you. And again, Henry, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Very well. We'll go on to the next item. Item 2 under the Finance Department, proposed City Council's risk assessment responsibilities policy. That the Finance and Governance Committee provide feedback on a proposed City Council risk assessment policy and give authorization to staff to present the item to the City Council for approval.
Mayor, this is CFO Riper. If I might introduce this item.
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair and members of the committee. The presentation will be given by Senior Manager Internal Controls, Christine Williams. I wanted the committee to be aware that today's will be Ms. Williams' last presentation because she is retiring from public service at the end of the month. She joined us 5.5 years ago as controller, a position in which she served for 4 years. Those of you who were here 5.5 years ago, unlike myself and Assistant CFO Donna Ventura, know what a tumultuous time that was for the city's finance department and finances. The first audit that Ms. Williams received as controller had, as you know, well over 100 audit findings. And she and her colleagues at the time got us started on the path towards resolving those findings. And then a 1.5 years ago, when she became Senior Manager Internal Controls, as you well know from the semi-annual updates she's been giving you, we've made a lot more progress under her leadership and with the support of the rest of the finance department and the operating departments in the city manager's office and your committee and the full council. We've made much more progress in the last 1.5 years. So we just wanted to acknowledge the contribution Ms. Williams has made to the city over the last 5.5 years. And her position is so important that there's already a recruitment open for her replacement, because while she's led us to great accomplishments, the work is not over. With that, Over to you, Ms. Williams, for the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that introduction, Kevin, and appreciate the comments very much. So good morning, Finance and Governance Committee and Mayor. Next slide, please. Today's recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee provide feedback on a proposed City Council risk assessment policy and give authorization to staff to present the item to City Council for approval. Next slide, please. There are 9 policies associated with the internal control framework with the acronym ICIF. Each policy is associated with one of the 5 committee of sponsoring organizations of the Treadway Commission with the acronym COSO components. As you may recall, the policies are being implemented in stages using the framework components. On September 1st, 2020, the City Council adopted the ICIF and the first 4 implementing policies under the COSO control environment, of which you see here in the red bracket, the first 4 that we adopted. And then the 5th policy was previously in place. And then the next COSO component is the risk assessment component, which you see with on the left there with the big red arrow, which is the risk assessment. And that's what we're bringing to you today, a proposed City Council's risk assessment responsibilities policy. Next slide, please. The Finance Department recommends the Finance and Governance Committee provide feedback on a proposed finance policy, which is Finance Policy 1.05, City Council's risk assessment responsibility. This policy defines the City Council's responsibilities related to defining the city's risk tolerance and overseeing how the organization manages and responds to risks. Before I detail the 5 key elements in the policy, I'd like to go over 3 definitions in the policy. So what is a risk assessment? A risk assessment is a systematic process of evaluating the potential risks that may be involved in a projected activity or undertaking at all levels. Risk tolerance is the maximum risk that an organization is willing to accept regarding each relevant risk. And risk exposure is the measure of potential future loss resulting from a specific activity or event. And to go back to highlight these 5 key areas in the policy, we want to ensure that the City Council shall review the city's risk tolerance and philosophy on a regular basis. We want to ensure that the city's strategic goals and decisions are in alignment with the organization's risk tolerance and philosophy. We want the City Council to review the organization's risk exposures and define the council's tolerance for risk by considering the cumulative impact of identified risks in relation to the organization's risk tolerance. We also want to stay apprised of the most significant risks and ascertain whether management is responding appropriately. And then from time to time, and as we just saw with Henry's presentation, the City Council shall assign the Finance and Governance Committee to work with the internal auditor to identify and evaluate risk factors for fraud and oversee the city manager's response to such issues. Risk awareness and effective risk management are critical factors for sound decision making. Next slide, please. Our next step. So after we receive feedback from the committee today, we are projecting to take this policy to the City Council for adoption as we're projecting January 5th, 2021. The next step in the risk assessment process, assuming this policy is approved by the City Council, would be to engage a consulting firm to perform a comprehensive risk assessment for the city. An RFP process will be conducted in the spring of 2021 to select the firm. The remainder of 2021, we want to bring the last 3 ICIF policies to the Finance and Governance Committee, as well as the City Council. And those 3 policies are related to control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities. Next slide, please. And just conclude with the recommendation that the Financing Committee received this presentation and that they would provide feedback on a proposed City Council risk assessment policy and give staff authorization to present the item to City Council for approval. Next slide, please. And I'll conclude with any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Madam City Clerk, we have no speaker cards on this item. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, why don't we start with Committee Member Lopez if she has any questions or comments?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is very, very important, you know, for everyone to be engaged in, and considering all, I mean, the various issues that come to council members, that come to council. What would be the appropriate timeline in terms of these discussions coming to, like, how often should we be discussing any possible risks or anything like that? I'm not sure if my question makes sense to you, but I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around it, and how can we ensure that we are continuously evaluating these issues?
Donna, did you want to kind of talk at all about the risk assessment
Sure.
at this point? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Christine. So obviously the first step is to have a risk assessment where we inventory all the risks that could have impacts on the city, could have a, financial impact. And then we would determine how we want to address those risks. Some of them we probably already are addressing, through the various, risk management efforts that we have. Some of them we may not need to address. We may just accept the risk based on the risk tolerance that the city council, determines. And some of them we may want to actively manage in a way that we haven't before. I would suggest that we would want to have that assessment performed once, and then on an annual basis at least revisit and say, okay, how are we doing in terms of managing these risks? Are there other things we need to be doing? Any new data, any new developments that have come up in the past year that would, change our assessment of the risk in terms of priority. I think it would be sort of an annual review. That would be my opinion. I don't know, Kevin, if you have a different view.
No, I would echo that timeline, but just to show you how, just to remind everybody how evolving and how unpredictable risk is. Imagine if we were having this meeting a year ago and somebody posed the risk of a global health pandemic that would sweep the nation and shut down the economy and cost many lives. We would have accepted that risk. So things change every year, and that's why it needs to be a dynamic process that we revisit at least annually. Risk manager Mike Moore is also on the call, and this might be a good time for him to weigh in. Mike, do you have any thoughts? No, apparently not.
No, it took a while for me.
Yeah, go
Can you
ahead.
hear me? I'm sorry, I had to unmute on my screen, even though I'm talking on my phone. I think this is a great approach to manage risk from a citywide perspective, looking at the larger strategic and organizational areas that are mainly, financial in nature that would affect the city. It can be anything from, a top sales tax producer that's leaving the city that could affect our budgeting, to a pandemic, as you mentioned, Kevin, and it's more of a strategic and operational, a broad approach. Enterprise risk management is what it's referred to as, that the city would look at all of its individual risks that affect its operations. So a little larger scope than what we look at in risk management when we're dealing with liability, workers' comp, and insurance risks that affect the city. It's looking at the total picture of the city and using that as a tool to manage the city. So yes, I like this approach.
There was a good example that we discussed actually recently with Mike on this around the liability, where we have, we're self-insured and then we have excess liability insurance for, very large claims. But, a risk assessment might have you look at things a little differently, where you say, okay, how much is it really costing me to self-insure versus to potentially make improvements that would reduce the number of incidents that we have, the trip and falls, things like that, where we have hazards. You might reprioritize how you, spend your resources based on the risk assessment, because in the long run, you could save money, right? In managing the risk in a different way.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I really appreciate that. And just a quick follow-up: is there any other factors of when this annual assessment should be done? Like, for example, should it be tied to the budget process before or after, or anything like that?
I mean, I definitely think it would be helpful to do it, in advance of the budget process, because you might make decisions about how to allocate resources in your CIP plan, for example. So yes, but I don't know that it has to be tied to that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. Williams, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I'd like to start out here this morning and just not reiterate, but to extend my congratulations to a woman who's done an outstanding job for this city. And I don't know where we'd be without her, Mr. Riper and Mr. City Manager and distinguished members of this committee. She has done an exceptional job. I'm so proud of you, Christina, and I'm very proud that you're going to be retiring. The other thing is, I don't understand this. Maybe you can tell me. You don't look old enough to retire. Can you explain that for me, please?
I am. A lot older.
Well, Mr. Riper,
young at heart.
Mr. Riper must not be working you hard enough, because you don't seem to show your age. So congratulations to you. And I'm very proud of you. And I just can't say more to the city manager, to the CFO, about where Christine Williams has brought the city in terms of this process of internal auditing and really having policies and procedures in place that are going to place the city in a much better position, so that events that occurred over the past decade or 2 decades are highly unlikely to ever occur again. And whether Mr. Riper is here, or Mr. Nguyen, or these committee members here present, Ms. Williams, myself, anyone else, it's unlikely that those episodes, as we'll call them, will ever take place again. So thank you very much, Christine, and congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
So here, I just want to share with my fellow committee members and the city manager, the finance director, just my thoughts, and the staff, just my thoughts about what I had to do to kind of get my hands around this, because I have to say, I don't know if I really had my hands around it. And let me just make sure that, can everyone see in front of me this? I just hope everyone can see this in front of me. What do you guys see? I want to make sure you see what I see. Do you see me scrolling a document?
Yeah, we
Yes.
see it, but
Okay.
if you could maximize the size, it's a little small to see.
I know it is. And I was looking for that, and I'm a
Getting better.
little, I'm a little challenged here. I mean, I'm not that bad with computers, you guys. I just I was looking for, usually there's a plus.
Top right corner of that screen.
That's not it here.
There. Nope, there.
Let me see. Let me see if this does it. Holy moly, roly poly. I don't think that does it. So let me just, it's probably going to then have less of an effect in terms of the visualization. And so what I did is I just wanted to know what other cities were doing. And, this is, the familiar word is benchmarking. And so I was able to find through the Office of the City Auditor of the City of San Diego. As you know, the former mayor of San Diego, Kevin Faulkner, is from Oxnard. So I've taken a real interest in San Diego and also their homeless program. And so this is an annual citywide risk assessment and audit work plan. And I just thought that there are elements of this that it would help me understand this a lot better. And let me contextualize this and say that for me, when we had the internal auditors take a look at the Performing Arts Center, City Core, and I think it might have been the golf course also. I didn't know, and I'm admitting this as the chairman of the committee, I didn't know that we weren't doing a financial audit. We were doing a performance audit. I never knew that. And I just, and it was lacking in terms of auditing. Yeah, I'm not an auditor. I wasn't trained to be an auditor, right? I didn't study accounting, et cetera. I just didn't have really that real idea about that. And just to talk about other cities, San Diego is a very large city. It's one of the largest in the state of California, one of the largest in the country. They have a 22-member auditing staff at a budget of $3.9 million. And that is enormous. But this is what helped me that I wanted to bring to the committee. It said performance audits and other audit activities. And this gets to the core of the fact that when we did City Core and the Performing Arts Center, and I believe the golf course, that I thought we were doing financial audits, and in fact, we weren't. We were doing performance audits. And if you guys can just see here, and I would make it larger if I could, it said the city charter requires the Office of the City Auditor to conduct all of its audits under government auditing standards. And there are three main types. There are financial audits, attestation, engagements, and performance audits. So I didn't have this framework. I didn't have those three items: financial audits, attestation, engagements, and performance audits. I think that this committee, what this is a work plan. And I think that the committee needs to understand properly its role. So the future of the committee, understand its role. Should the committee, for reasons of fiscal accountability, shouldn't the city be doing performance audits on coming up with a plan to do performance audits on various departments? I mean, we have made tremendous progress, but one of the things as the outgoing finance chairman that I would want to see is that this committee is going to, along with the city manager and the CFO and the staff, it's going to begin to reform city governance, as Mr. Nguyen and myself and members of the council have been doing. We've been reforming Oxnard city government, and that's in part what Ms. Williams, this whole presentation is about reform in Oxnard city government. We should be doing, I would argue, performance audits like the ones that were conducted on City Core and these other departments on a rotating basis, because we should be looking through those performance audits at various measures of accountability and setting goals. And this does very much get along the lines of performance-based budgeting, which I argue that the committee needs to return this city to performance-based budgeting. And anyway, I won't go into that in any detail right now. The attestation engagements are taking a look at specific areas and tasking the auditor to look into specific areas, and maybe as they come up. And we've had lengthy discussions about this with Mr. Nguyen, with Ms. Klima, and with others. And then finally, we have a CAFR each year that performs basically the financial audit. Are there financial audits? Maybe the attestation engagements are the ones that are going to be more of a forensic audit if we ever wanted that. But one of the issues I have here is the independence of the council members as a checks and balance with the staff. The abuses that took place a decade ago and then going back several decades were a case where the city council was unaware of what the staff was doing. And in some instances, the city council was colluding with the staff. And so if you're going to have set up the role of this committee and the role of the council, I think this has to be made very clear how much independence. I mean, imagine, and I won't get into details about this, but imagine a committee of this nature taking place 10 years ago, and the committee having a discussion with the city manager about what areas should they be auditing, when meanwhile, whether it's the Environmental Resources Division, where I believe some major transgressions took place, illegal activity took place. How do you assure that there is a real balance? And so I just think that when this comes back to the committee, and I think that maybe is the purpose of what Ms. Williams said would be a consultant would put this together, is that's what a consultant would do, is put together a plan. What's the plan and the role of the committee? And therefore the committee should be vetting this, and then it should go to the city council. There's no way, and I'm going to say this to my distinguished colleague, committee member Perello, there's no way you can do the detailed work of this committee in these areas and then simply replicate all of that on the city council level. You just can't do that. It defeats the purpose of the committee system. What the committee should be doing is vetting, and it should be, most importantly, distilling the information down to, as I just talked about here, these 3 points, and then really getting to what here says: risk assessment is a process of systematically scoring for relative impact of a variety of risk factors, right? So that's what the main council should be talking about. Hey, this is what the committee work is done through the consultant and the staff. And this information now is distilled and it's being presented to the council. And the council, they don't get into the specifics of this whole matter. That's what the committee does. And even the council, I mean, the council and the committee need to debate. Look, the whole Finance and Governance Committee could be occupied or preoccupied with just auditing. It's a large responsibility. I mean, San Diego, 22 staff members, $3.9 million budget. So I think that the committee is going to need to, given the part-time nature of this government, the role of it, I've asked that the primary role of Finance and Governance Committee is take on the fiscal management, not management, that's the job of the city manager, take on prioritization of the budget, that the city council members are provided a framework to do that. So that, I believe, should be the primary purpose of the committee, of the Finance and Governance Committee. But when it comes to risk assessment and this auditing mechanism, I think we need to come, that given the resources we have, given the time we have, the capacity, we need to be presented a plan. And I just would like, any staff member, it would start with the city manager, to solicit his viewpoints on that, and then maybe members of the committee. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you recall, I actually talked about these points at a committee earlier on. I can't remember, and I provided the same sort of positive critique going all the way back to the genesis of this. While the inception and the need was fully appropriate, having at the time only a city council fiscal policy task force of 2 people, 2 members of the council, the task force couldn't actually make any decisions. So that was difficult. and then not being able to invest in a robust audit program is a real challenge. Now, going forward in the future, that's a discussion this committee can have and present options to the council. But I had already mentioned on very similar is that if you want to maintain a healthy organization, you have to have a routine audit program, and it is complex and it is expensive, because when you want to do a performance slash financial audit on any given department, you need firms that have some expertise and understanding of those particular professions. So, and I've been through this before, setting up a rotating program where every 5, depending on the size of the city, it would be every 5 or 6 years that any particular department would get a thorough audit. Now, that might sound like a long time in between, but if you really think it through, cities and departments go through their history without ever having a thorough audit. And that's actually not a good thing. And just think about it as a human being who needs to get a physical checkup at least once a year. But imagine if well, some people have to go through this where they're not able to get the physical. But imagine if you can't get a physician's, exam once a year or even every 2 years. So it's the same for the organization, but to do it well and to do it correctly, it has to be programmed, it has to be systematic, and it's going to be costly. You have to invest money into it. And the example you drew out here from the city of San Diego, I'm glad you reminded everyone of the size and scale of that city. So to have in-house auditing, and of course it's a charter city, but as you mentioned, I think they spend more than $3 million a year on that, on what they perform there. And I'm pretty certain they're not auditing every department of the city every year. So they must be on a rotation as well. So for us, it would be the same kind of thing. You could pick 1 or 2 departments at a time at most, depending on the size of the department. And then you could scope out, the committee could scope out, based on what we know currently, we could scope out the areas where the audit should focus. So you're certainly on the right path in terms of thinking through how this should work in the future. But I certainly support it. But again, it requires an investment, and that also is going to have to be part of the budgeting process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee Member Perello, just talking about what I presented and the city manager's response. If I could solicit your viewpoints, please.
Okay. Number one, Jim, I was able to open up some of the presentation that what we have on the screen right now on my own screen to be able to read it. But I hope that you will send that to each member of the committee, the entire packet that you had there. That's number one. Number two, the idea sounds good. And I don't recall which sheet it was, but when they talked about finance, assertion and performance, I think if they were going to be, shall we say, so that the general public can understand, they should have explained what each one of them were in that thing. The points that were made, and again, I still want to get back to the presentation because I didn't get a chance to speak on that. On this, yeah, I think this is a good idea. And Mayor, there were some real things that took place in the city that no one seemed to pay. There were no prices paid by the individuals involved, except for the public that paid the bills, in whether it was loss of income, excessive charges for services provided, and loss of confidence in local government, which we're still fighting. The loss of confidence in local government. The trust got burned big time. And it's been tremendous changes, tremendous amounts of blood, sweat, and tears by the people that work here, the people that have been brought in, the people that are serving on the council to make this better. Anything that can make this city better is a good deal. Your performance-based budgeting, I'm still not warm and fuzzy on that, but I will tell you this. We went out for new auditors. One of the applicants described explaining and teaching council members how to understand when they receive an audit. Because if you don't understand what's presented in, it could be assumed garbage in, garbage out. It all boils down to trust. And we do know from the past, we've had auditors come in. I believe Ms. Williams can attest to that, or 2015, and they started finding problems, and they started to go back and look at other audits, and they found problems with those audits. Your suggestions are taken to heart. I have no idea if I'm still going to be on the Finance and Governance Committee. I hope so. But whoever is on this thing, they need to be aware that the way we have set this up in the future, the Finance and Governance Committee is going to have a lot of say with respect to what goes forward to the council, and it's going to be a lot of responsibility to understand what the hell they're looking at. If they don't understand what the hell they're looking at, they're not worth, sorry. They don't understand what they're looking at, they're not much good to the residents of the city. So I appreciate your points.
Thank you very much. Committee Member Lopez.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, these are all great things that we should be aiming for to really raise the standard in the city. So I think whatever we can do in the long term, for the long term would be good for just the general, I think, view and perception and everything that we're doing. So I think this is a good idea for you to bring forward.
Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate it. And once again, Ms. Williams, congratulations. And Ms. Williams, can I ask you just as a final comment, what are your plans?
Well, first priority is assisting my father with some health challenges. So that will kind of be just my first priority. And then that's it. I'm just going to help spend as much time with my parents while I can. And then the rest is just no schedule and just, try to kind of work's always been my identity. So I have to try and find a new one. And I'm not sure what that will be yet.
Very well. Very well. So thank you very much for your service. And
Mayor, I'd still like to address the item.
I think we lost him. I think you can go ahead, Bert.
Okay, all right. Number one, Ms. Williams, wish you the very best in the future. I want to thank you a lot, and I'm sure I do not speak out of turn here. When you first came on board, I had started out, there was a Finance and Governance Committee with Councilmember Ramirez and Councilmember McDonald. Councilmember Ramirez asked me 3 different times, 3 different occasions, 3 different council meetings, if I wanted the seat. And she apparently wanted to get off, and I got the seat. And in getting that seat, a lot of questions got asked, and I was taken to task for asking the questions, and I believe you had come on at that time.
Sorry about that.
I was told that I am not the most pleasant person in asking questions. So I want to apologize to you now before you leave the city of Oxnard if I was too rough. But I did appreciate you coming to the city of Oxnard, coming from United Water, coming here, and basically you got thrown in with a bunch of sharks. And there was a turnover in that department, and you stuck it out, and you stuck it out, and you stuck it out, and you stayed. And you're leaving on a very high note. You brought in situations where we have standardization, where it's not, well, some other city does it this way, some other county does it that way, but Oxnard does it in its own hybrid. You've standardized some things. I appreciate that tremendously. And I would like to now address the matter that's before us right now before we move forward. I really appreciate Assistant CFO Ms. Ventura mentioning the trip and falls and looking at things at risks and saving money and message, but I would like to get a question answered by Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, the question I have is, there was a question asked of Ms. Ventura, and then later the CFO, Mr. Riper, if there should be like a reporting back to the council with a time frame. Do you feel similar inclined to, what are your views on that matter, Mr. Moore?
Councilmember Perillo, is that in regards to the budgeting process?
No, in regard to the question that Ms. Lopez asked, if there would be some sort of recommendation to report back to the council as to, you know, how are we doing on this matter? Keeping us informed of the risk assessment.
I think that is a great idea. I believe that this approach that's being proposed through the finance department as an internal control framework is a very broad assessment of risk, which we would be a part of in risk management. And I agree with that approach. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Okay, with that, I have a very strong request to make of this committee. In looking at the resolution, I see nothing that has a time frame when it is reported. But I look at the resolution 1, 2, third paragraph, second from the last line, third paragraph. It says, as well as keeping city council appraised of the most significant risks and ascertaining whether management is responding appropriately. I believe based on the three positive viewpoints of employees that are involved, and this is what their business is, I consider the top in this finance department. The city is very blessed to have them here, and their opinions carry one hell of a lot of weight with me, that there should be a reporting. I want a time added to this resolution, whether it's annual, biannual, whatever. I want a time. And the reason I'm asking, we could be having these reports and we could be doing this work and it would be helping in-house. That means when I say in-house, I mean the staff. And I'm not challenging, picking on, or degrading the staff. I believe that the point that was made, starting with Ms. Ventura, was to report back to the council. When the council gets the information, the public gets the information. The things that have happened in the past in this city, there have always been some in government, in staff, elected, and members of the public that knew things were wrong. They knew things were wrong. And it was get along, go along. The general public did not know. The more that we can have something like this proposal, which Ms. Williams, I appreciate your involvement with this, and I appreciate the comments from the three people that have given their opinions. I believe there needs to be in the resolution so that we have something and we can't say, oops, we missed it. And if we do miss it, somebody's responsible and accountable for missing it, that the report comes back to the council on a time frame so that the council, this I would assume would be made at a committee meeting or hopefully at a general full tilt council meeting, the public has an opportunity to hear. And those are my comments. And again, Ms. Williams, I wish you the very best. And I really appreciate that you hung in there and stuck it out because Ms. Williams, you're very well aware how many people went through this area like a revolving door, and you did not. Thank you. Thank you for your work.
So much, Mr. Perillo, for your comments. I appreciate it. And everybody's comments. Thank you so much. It's very much appreciated.
And so my feedback, thank you, and you're very welcome. My feedback on this item, Mayor, is that we do move this forward to the council, but we insert a time, and I believe if it's yearly, we insert the word annual in back of appraised annual of the resolution. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels about it. I'm all open.
Well, we have this committee member Perillo on this particular item. The recommendation is that we provide feedback, which we have done extensively on this proposed city council risk assessment policy. I think the staff has some, good ideas and direction about what it is that has been said. And now we have to give authorization to the staff to present this item to the city council. So that's what I'd be looking for a motion on. I tried that actually earlier, but I went out on the broadcast. So I entered the broadcast when you were speaking.
Well, let me, Mayor, may I speak, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. City Attorney, I wish to have the word annual inserted in the resolution in back of the word appraised. And the word would be annually. Is that within my prerogative as a member of this committee? Headed to this resolution, if it is approved by the committee.
Yes. So just to be clear, that you are referring to Exhibit A to the proposed resolution?
It says attachments, under attachments on the staff report that I have, it says resolution establishing city council risk and assessment responsibilities V2. So I don't see where it says attach Exhibit A. I'm sorry.
Well, the resolution has an exhibit to it, and the exhibit is the City of Oxnard Finance Policy FPOL 1.05. So what provision are you on?
Do see that now. Thank you. I'm sorry for cutting in. I'm sorry.
Again, which provision are you looking at?
I'm looking at the actual body of the resolution, which.
So I see, sorry to cut you off. I see the word apprised at 1.0D. Stay apprised, council shall stay apprised of the most significant. So where else are you seeing it? I could do a word search for apprised. Shows up.
I think he's looking at the resolution itself in the second whereas paragraph.
This is the city manager. Can I chime in real quick? Because I think we're overcomplicating it. Councilmember Perrello, my understanding is you simply want us to insert language to memorialize the fact that we will update the council, starting with this committee annually.
Yes.
So council member, what you're pointing to is a recital, which is typically sort of the context for the resolution action being considered, which is the now therefore language. So I would suggest that if you wanted something changed, that it be in the policy itself, which is what the resolution is implementing or effectuating.
Okay, we can do that, but Mr. Perrello, your intent is you want this to come to the committee annually. Is that correct?
I want it to come to the council annually. The committee, but I want ladies and gentlemen, I don't want anybody in the council going, nobody told me. I don't want nobody in that thing. Nobody told me. That's an excuse that we can drive 10 semi trucks through. And it's an excuse that's got to be closed.
So that's simple for us to do. We will take this input and we will present it as such when this item goes to the full council.
Thank you very much. I hope my committee members see some wisdom in that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think committee member Perrello, and again, we have the agenda item that we have to actually approve the recommendation. So I just ask first and foremost to get that out of the way. Do we have a motion on approving the recommendation of giving the authorization to staff to present this item to the city council for approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So we have the motion by Madame City Clerk, by committee member Perrello, and a second by committee member Lopez. I'll just say that committee member Perrello, I think it's really important. I kind of alluded to this about distilling the information at the committee level. You know, there's a lot of things here, like just how much can the committee take on? What's the capacity of the committee, the capacity of the staff? As city manager talked about, a more rigorous auditing program. And, you know, we talked about the differences between San Diego and the size of the city and their resources and Oxnard's. So I think there's been pretty clear direction given to the staff, and I'm confident that when this is brought forward, that what we've said here on the committee level will be memorialized in the staff report, and that your goals and objectives that the city manager kind of summarized will be also fulfilled. The vote, please, Madame City Clerk.
If I can just say something, Mayor, please.
Yes.
The reason I feel so strongly about this is going forward, this Finance and Governance Committee has been tasked with a lot more responsibility with respect to the audits, all the audits. And there are only 3 members on this body of the 7 on the council. I do not want these 3 to potentially be held with their feet to the fire by the other 4 because they didn't hear or they didn't understand. I want the entire body, whether I'm on this committee or not, I want the entire body's feet to the fire when it comes to the public asking questions. What did you know and when did you know it? And I believe that our government is working to get it so that our council has the opportunity to know everything when they need to know it, and they are accountable to the public. Thank you.
The vote, please.
Did we have a second on that motion?
Yes, that was from Committee Member Lopez.
Okay, and just to be clear, the motion itself was to approve staff's recommendation as presented.
Yes.
Okay.
And with the comments, that we made the direction.
Okay.
Yes.
Member Lopez.
Yes.
Member Perello.
Yes.
And Chair Flynn.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 3-0.
Very
Thank you.
well. We'll go to the final item under reports, item 3, Fire Department. The subject, Fire Academy fiscal year 2021. Recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that City Council number 1 receive a report from the interim fire chief discussing the current level of vacancies, the need to reestablish our recruit training academy, and adding, I'm sorry, when that came up, 1 second. 1 sec here. There we go. Thank you. I'm sorry. And adding additional recruit firefighters to the academy cadre, and 2, approve a budget appropriation of $755,461 from Fund 104 Measure O half-cent sales tax. And we'll have a presentation from the interim fire chief, Alexander Hamilton.
Committee Chair Flynn, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? I didn't get a chance to do a sound check before.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you for the time to be able to present this item. Next slide, please. So the recommendation for today, as Committee Chair Flynn mentioned, is to approve a budget appropriation coming out of Fund 104 Measure O for $755,461 to fund a fire academy tentatively scheduled for January 11th start for 15 firefighter trainees. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of background. As you may recall, we did actually start an academy earlier this year on March 9th. And we were allocated $711,000, just under $712,000 for that academy. It started on March 9th, which obviously was right at the beginning of when this pandemic started, really kicked off in earnest for us here in Ventura County. We did start with 14 recruits. Ultimately, at the time, we just didn't know as much about the virus as we do now, and so had some significant concerns about how we were going to keep our people safe through the academy. Additionally, obviously, we had no idea at the time how deep of a hole we were going to go into as a city financially. And so the academy was ultimately furloughed after 2 pay periods. So we did, we started on March 9th. We had 2 weeks of in-person training. We were trying to keep it going where we're figuring out what was going to happen. So we did 2 more weeks of remote learning. But ultimately we had to furlough the academy. So we started with 14 recruits. We actually had 1 resignation. We terminated 3 of those recruits. And so we furloughed 10 recruits. And so of the original 711, just under $712,000 we were allocated, $406,378 was unappropriated on October 20th of this year and put back into the Measure O fund. Next slide, please. And so for the academy, that was a false start. For the academy that started in March of this year, we ultimately expended about $305,000, $620, and that there's a breakdown of where those costs were for the academy. Of the $305,000 represented on this slide, approximately $166,525 will not be recovered. So that was money that we spent in recruiting costs, money that we spent in turnouts and uniforms for those 4 recruits that were let go, and then money that we spent in salary for the training cadre. Of some of those uniforms and some of the personal protective equipment that was purchased for the trainees that are no longer with us, we will be able to reuse as we restart this academy, but ultimately there was a cost to canceling the academy. Next slide, please. So I think it's fair to say, and I think everyone can agree, that this year has been nothing short of hellacious for everyone. And so I feel very fortunate that we've been able to keep our workforce as healthy as we have done this year. And we're working hard to keep it that way, even as the case counts are climbing around us. And I will also say that all of our personnel are incredibly grateful to be gainfully employed right now. But with that being said, it's fair to say that this year has taken a heavy toll on our workforce. The vacancies that we have had through the summer, through this wildland season, have really stretched our resilience as an organization. The 15 vacancies, while that represents 14% of station personnel, we did have an exposure earlier this year that sidelined an additional 11 personnel, which is almost one full shift of personnel. That was, we ended up having to recall personnel from around the state that were working on wildfires just to make sure that we could keep the doors open on all our stations. So as you can see there from some of the bullet points in the slide, we have all of our personnel have been working particularly hard. The one bullet point on this slide that I think is really pertinent is the overtime mandates have tripled. So that's people that just do not want to be at work because they've already been at work so many days that they'd really like to go home, and we can't let them go home because we don't have anyone else to work that position. So it definitely has been a tough year, and we are looking forward to bringing in some fresh recruits and some fresh bodies to help out. Next slide, please. And so for this slide, I just want to remind the committee that firefighting as a profession is based on a constant staffing model. So we always have 3 personnel assigned to an engine, 4 personnel assigned to a ladder truck as a minimum. The National Fire Protection Association and the Standards of Cover study that we published in 2017 both actually recommended Oxnard develop a plan to move towards 4-person engine companies, and hopefully in time we'll get to that point. But for the purposes of this slide, because of that constant staffing, there is a cost associated with backfilling positions. That's our station coverage that are vacant due to, as we've had, retirements and resignations, but also when people take vacation, when they're assigned to duty, when they have sick leave. All of those things involve backfilling those positions. So you can see that the cost of the current vacancies would be $2.3 million for a full year. And then to fill those vacancies in base salary costs would be just over $1.4 million. And just as a brief aside, we are our overtime budget, or our station coverage budget, we will be over budget by the end of the year due to these vacancies. However, with the savings from having those vacancies, the direct labor savings, plus additional reimbursements from wildland and mutual aid deployments, we are hoping to be close to on budget if you combine our station coverage and our direct labor costs. And we've been watching that very closely. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we do like to highlight, and certainly it's been a discussion point when we've started previous academies, is looking at better coordination here within the operational area. And this is, we did look at this very closely, particularly because this academy that we're restarting is actually starting very close at the same time that Ventura County Fire Department is also starting an academy. So we were hoping to be able to have some economies of scale and sort of leverage some savings. Ultimately, the biggest factor in not being able to do more coordination just comes down to the cost. As you can see there, the Ventura County Fire Protection District, their cost per recruit in the most recent numbers we have is for 2017, and it was over $116,000 per recruit. Our costs for this academy, and that includes the cost of the false start that we had in March, is $70,000 per recruit. Historically, and the last academy that we ran, which was back in 2017, our cost was about $60,000 per recruit. Some of the other issues with a regional academy is sheer numbers of recruits. You know, we are aiming for 15 recruits. I believe the county is looking at 25. And that's a big number of firefighter recruits to be running around a drill ground. And so we need to ensure that we can provide for a safe environment. And then the other issue is just the other issue that we had in trying to create a regional academy was coordinating schedules. You know, are they teaching the basic hose and ladders at the same time that we would be teaching it? One of the other issues is that we, unfortunately, every fire department has a slightly different curriculum. And so an example of that would be that we spend 2 full weeks with our recruits on the ladder truck and learning all the different disciplines that the ladder truck has to be proficient in. The Ventura County Fire Department, I believe, spends either 3 or 4 days on that same subject. So therein lies some of our issues in terms of trying to coordinate. However, I did want to reassure this committee that we do have a dynamic staffing plan in place. And what that means is that if we lose recruits, which we often do, unfortunately, but if we lose recruits within the academy, we will reduce the size of the cadre. So we'll send more of our training cadre back out to the stations. And therefore reduce our station coverage costs. The other thing that we're doing is the second half of this academy is more to do with specialty disciplines and specialty classes. And so we'll have a smaller training cadre for those, and we will only bring them in for these specific classes, and then they'll go back to their regular assignments. Next slide, please. Okay, so if we, our goal is to graduate all 15 of our recruits. We are very hopeful, and we've been in close communication with the recruits, with the 8 furloughed recruits, in addition to the 7 additional recruits that we are bringing on for this academy. And so they're all working very hard to be physically fit and ready for this upcoming academy. But even if we fill all these current vacancies, we will continue to have vacancies. And so the current level of vacancies we have are due to a number of factors. We haven't had a training academy since 2017. Since that time, we've had 5 resignations of people that have gone on to other fire departments. Of the 10 firefighter recruits that we furloughed in March, 2 of them have since resigned to go to other departments. And then we've also had 7 retirements since 2017, and we've terminated 2 personnel as well. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we've got to the number of vacancies that we have. The department does anticipate having to run another recruit academy in the beginning of 2022, as we do anticipate some retirements. And then obviously we also are anticipating increased staffing due to development, specifically the Sakioka development out on the east side of town. Next slide, please. And so the recommendation is that this committee would move that the City Council approve a budget appropriation of $755,461 from Fund 104, which is the Measure O Fund. And that concludes the presentation. Well, there is one more slide if you could move forward to that, but I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has anything.
Thank you very much, Chief Hamilton. And just to double check with the city clerk, there are no speaker cards on this item. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, very well. Committee Member Lopez, any questions, please?
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for bringing this forward, especially under the literally current circumstances of what, you know, the weather that we're in. I know that this is very, very critical in planning ahead. So thank you for bringing this forward. Just wanted to clarify, I'm not sure if I understood correctly that some of the recruits that had started earlier this year, they would be the ones coming back through the next academy. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. So we furloughed 10 recruits in March. 8 of those 10 are returning to us. 2 of them resigned to work in other departments. And just as a brief aside, 3 of the recruits that we furloughed, we actually brought back as disaster service workers. And so they've been helping us out with antibody testing and other COVID related items and been a huge help for us. So we're hoping they all do very well in this upcoming academy.
Great. Thank you.
Committee Member Perillo.
Chief, thank you very much. And thanks for the explanation about the furlough and the explanation about the dropout and your explanations about people coming up for retirement and, you know, the numbers that are coming up, and you've had to take the responsibility of the chief and the management of the fire department. You've had to let a couple of people go for reasons of personnel. That's none of my business. I do appreciate your presentation. I did get a copy of a questionnaire from a member of the public, Mr. Barberine. He had asked specifically about the $400,000. You've explained it, in my opinion. It went back into the Measure O. It came earlier. It was explained to us. I'm hoping Mr. Barberine is watching this. If not, I'll link him to this particular item. One question I have, not for you, but for the general manager of the city. With respect to taking the money that we will need to fund this, which I support, you got to have people in position. You can't run with a skeleton crew and work them like dogs. And I'm not saying that we are, but you can't work, whether it's animals or equipment, you can't work it till it's driven into the ground. You can't do that. But the money that would be taken out of Measure O, with the recent passage of some of the initiatives and the requirements of the conditions of the improvements of the streets, how is this going to impact that going forward? And that's my question.
Thank you, Councilmember Perillo. And while we look for the general manager, the city manager will answer your question.
I'm
happens every week.
Manager.
I love it. So long and the short of it is there's really isn't two things. Number one is this was originally funded out of Measure O. And because of the pandemic and the furlough, we returned, we had to expend some of it to spool up the academy and get it started. So that money was spent. Now with the 8 people who are returning, we don't have to re-spend that money in terms of the initial interview and intake and all that. But the money was returned to Measure O, which happened in October, I believe. So we're asking now just to use it again. On the big picture though, and I'm glad you pointed out the issue not just of managing positions, attrition, and the budget, but you highlighted the issue of just human fatigue, and that's really also an important part of this equation. My understanding when I got here a couple of years ago is that the fire departments did not have a routine budget allocation for academies. Chief, can you nod if that's correct?
That is correct.
So that's something we need to fix going forward. we've got to have a routine budget item for the academy, because you have to be ahead of the curve in replacing people who retire or people who move on for other reasons. Otherwise, you're always going to have the excessive overtime issue in addition to the employee fatigue. But I don't see, and perhaps the CFO might want to chime in, but I don't see this particular item having any particular impact from the other measures. That's just something we have to deal with the larger budget. And again, we'll have to confront that in the next budget cycle.
Yep. City manager is correct on all counts with respect to the Measure O fund.
Thank you very much. Okay, and Fire Chief Hamilton, I have one other question. On your slide 7, they showed if you can put that back up, please. Slide 7 showed the cost for the county fire protection and for the various academies. And you'd mentioned that the curriculum is slightly different. I hope you can get the ear of the outgoing council member who's going to be a board of supervisor, Ms. Ramirez, and give her this specific information, because I see no reason why we should have curriculums that are different. I do understand the county has to go out there, maybe more rural, but there's oftentimes our firefighters are asked to go into other areas of the state and deal in rural. So I would hope that the training could be the same. But your example that you gave, time on the truck, 2 weeks with the city of Oxnard and 3 to 4 days with the county of Ventura. If I'm a city of Oxnard employee and I get they call them cooperative services when we help each other, and I got my red truck and the yellow truck drives up, and the yellow truck drives up and I'm going, I hope the guy on the yellow truck has paid attention to what's going on with respect to how we handle the truck, because there should be something where it interfaces really smoothly, no grinding the gears, no hiccups, no nothing, that it interfaces, and we could bring the cost down. I use an example. I don't believe we have a private in-house Oxnard Police Academy. I believe we train with the county. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I hope someday we do that, not to put people out of business, but to get a better bang for the buck for the residents of this city. And those are my comments. Thank you. I support this.
Committee member Perello, if I could just address that very, very briefly. And I want to reassure you that we have a fantastic relationship with our operational area partners. We work more closely than ever before. And so although we have a different length of recruit training for the ladder truck, for example, we do in-service training with them as often as we can, so that we have very similar terminology. We all know what each other is doing when it comes to our interoperability. One part of the difference in curriculum, part of that is the risk that the different risks that we have. Obviously, the county has a lot broader of a risk, and that's reflected by their academy is actually 6 weeks longer than ours, which is in part why their cost is higher. Because their academy is longer. So that would be something that we could look at doing and adding more of the things that they do. But one of the big differences between the two agencies is we don't have any Type 3 engines. A Type 3 engine is used specifically for wildland firefighting. And so while we do respond on wildland incidents, we generally have a different role because we have Type 1 engines. And so there are some differences, and it's certainly not, I don't mean to make it sound negative that the county is more expensive. It's merely just a difference, and it sort of reflects the risks that each agency has, if that helps.
Okay, thank you. And if this, you were asked them, if this slide goes to the council, I would hope we put that, I think you said the county is 6 weeks longer. That might be something we want to put a little asterisk under it, because thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, members of the committee. I do want to note the time. The Public Works Committee is scheduled to begin 3 minutes ago. Chief Hamilton, thank you very much for the thorough presentation. It's very difficult, the circumstances that your department has been working under, as many of the other departments. And I'm hopeful that this academy can get started as soon as possible with no delay, and that the staffing issue can be addressed. You have done a good job, and I'm very proud of proud of you, and also very happy with the answers that you provided about the county and or a regional training aspect. I have long noted this. One would imagine, and I know you've stated it clearly, that economy of scale, and that word economy of scale, I would imagine it would be less to do it with the county. That's the only time, in my mind, that it came up. In my mind, I understand that there are different training, but I think part of governance, I think, in the future for all city departments is how we can combine our efforts on a regional level to save costs. And with that said, thank you very much. I want to say to my distinguished members of the council that when I met with Interim Chief Hamilton and the city manager on another recent issue involving the emergency response time, that I expressed my confidence in the leadership of Interim Chief Hamilton. He's a remarkable person, and I think that the city manager made a very wise choice in selecting him, not only as the interim manager, but it's my desired goal. And I hope that would be the case of the committee members, obviously, and it's up to the city manager that Interim Chief Hamilton becomes the permanent chief. Thank you, Chief Hamilton, for your leadership. And now we have here to receive the report and
I'll move the recommended action.
Guess good. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Madam City Clerk, we have a motion by Committee Member Perillo and a second by Committee Member Lopez. The vote, please.
Member Lopez,
Yes.
Member Perillo,
Yes.
and Chair Flynn.
Aye.
The motion to approve carries 3-0.
Outstanding. And are there any future agenda items requests?
None for me.
No.
And I'd have requests, but it wouldn't do any good. So I've already made my request known. Thank you very much to the committee. This is my last committee meeting as the chair of the Finance and Governance Committee. I'll just say very quickly to my colleagues that it has been really a pleasure working with both of you on this committee. I've really enjoyed myself. And I would say at times that being the chairman of this committee can rival just being the mayor of the city. I've really, really enjoyed this committee and the work that the committee's done. Thank you very much to both of you, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks so much. This meeting's adjourned.